Welcome everyone to the November Longplay Recap. We got it out earlier this time. We're going to recap all the playthroughs we've played through November, and again, a little warning here. There's going to be some massive spoilers here. Alright, first of all, we have EDF 6. Now, the story takes place right after EDF 5, and it's more or less a time travel plot where we try to stop the aliens from wiping out humanity. At this point in the game, we've traveled back into the past twice now to stop the aliens from getting the upper hand. Basically, we're on the EDF 7 timeline, and in EDF 7, humanity's struggling really hard to fight off the aliens. Our crowning achievement in this timeline is stopping a giant moving fortress from wiping out the planet, but unfortunately, that's not enough to win the war, and so humanity is doomed to extinction. In this ruined world, we find some new enemy types like the excavators and the mermen. The excavators are actually pretty tricky. If they catch you unaware, they can melt your life bar pretty fast with their fire. And the mermen are also fairly annoying since they spew a poisonous cloud around themselves which will knock you out pretty quick if you're not careful. Since this timeline is doomed, we'll go back in time once again to EDF 8 to try to fix it. However, something goes wrong and we get sent further back into time before our character joins the EDF in EDF 5 when he was still a civilian. At this point, the main character realizes that there's no use in preserving the timeline history and just starts using their extensive knowledge of the future or past future to directly change history by showing the EDF how to deal with the aliens. Because in the normal timeline, it takes them 5 months to realize that you can shoot the giant glowing red area to inflict damage to the spaceships. Now, one of the most important moments in EDF 8 is saving the subcarrier Pandora from destruction. Normally, it would have gotten destroyed by the giant mothership 8, but since we're disregarding the regular timeline, we save the subcarrier and destroy the mothership, giving a huge victory to the EDF. And boy, was this mission difficult because chat decided to change our load up for this one, and we were stuck with a very slow cannon and a very slow grenade launcher, which was pretty unusable. We also fought a giant dragon a few times, but every single time he escaped. However, thanks to the sub we rescued earlier, we managed to take him down for good. Well, after a few tries. And finally, the EDF does a global land offensive against the aliens as a feint to bait their attention, only to hit their main mothership with nukes, and changing the doomed history for humanity and the EDF for good. Or at least, that's what we hope for. And so, for our next game up, we have Final Fantasy IX. Now, what we did first was try to save our kidnapped companion Aiko, which we called Adri in our playthrough, from the Twin Jesters and the big bad guy Kuja. After defeating the Jesters, our heroes also find the Lindblum Queen Hilda, who was also held captive. Freeing and reuniting her with the king gives us a new airship, and we now have access to the whole world. Our first stop will be in Treno, where we're going to pick up the Thief Gloves. And with those, we're going to fix that god-awful steal rate system that Final Fantasy IX has in place. We're also going to do a bit of side questing as we go around to collect some frogs, and then we do a bit of Chocobo Hot and Cold. And then we continue on with the story where we head to Ipsen Castle to find the key to reach the world of Terra. Inside, we find out that the key is to place 4 mirrors in 4 locations and to defeat the Guardians simultaneously. But instead of doing that, we decide to go do more Chocobo treasure hunting. And by doing so, we evolved our Chocobo twice. He can now go into shallow waters and walk through mountains, which should help out with the treasure finding. And so ends our Final Fantasy IX session. Now we'll segue into our next long play that we actually finished this time, which is Mega Man Legends. Basically, how it went down was that after running around in the main gate dungeon, you find all the key cards and activate the main control panel, which opens up a new gate leading deeper into the island. Before we get there, we fight the Bonds a few more times, and once we finally beat them for good, we head inside the final gate. We encounter Mega Man Juno at the end of it all, who assumes that he was activated to destroy all carbon-based life forms on the island. After destroying him, it's Data who deactivates the destruction sequence and saves the day. And so ends the story of Mega Man Legends. We say one final goodbye to the town and head off for other adventures. My final thoughts on the game is that while it was a simple game, it was pretty enjoyable. The characters were fun, the gameplay was alright, the story didn't overstay its welcome, and it was nice replaying a game that I had played in my younger years, so yeah, enjoyed it. Next we have Warhammer 40k Space Marine. Now for some reason we decided to go with hard mode on our first playthrough, and I'm sure we won't regret that later on. In the game we play as Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, and we gotta go smash some orcs who are assaulting the planet Graia, or Graia. Overall, it's a pretty straightforward action game. We did struggle a bit at first with the controls, but we managed to pull through. Well, until we met our first elite orc, he was a problem for a while. But after that, it was pretty much smooth sailing. We then meet up with the Imperial Guard Lieutenant, who informs us that the only way for the planet to get reinforcements and to push back the invading force is by destroying the planetary gun emplacement that the orcs took over. So our party pushes through the fort, fights hundreds of orcs, and eventually destroys the emplacement. That frees us up for a real mission to secure the Battle Titans, which are located in the Ajakis Manufactorum. In the Manufactorum, they meet up with Inquisitor Drogon, who tells them that the orcs are about to assault the power supply area, and they need to stop them before they cause tremendous damage. We get there, fight the orcs, something goes wrong with the power source, Captain Titus tries to stop it, and he gets zapped by it, and yeah, that's pretty much what happened in our session of Space Marine. Coming up, we have Shantae Risky's Revenge, a little Metroidvania-like game where you unlock powers and abilities to progress through a small, closed map. Though, talking about the map, I really wish it was an actual map like a Metroid game and not the concept of a map where it just shows the big landmarks. Anyhow, the story is basically that Risky Boots, the main antagonist, steals a magic lamp, and we have to stop her by collecting the 3 magic seals that would release the lamp's power before she does. The seals are held by 3 barons, which we all visit to either fight or do something for them to receive the seals. And while doing that, we also unlock 3 transformations. You can transform as a monkey, an elephant, and a mermaid. Though, for some reason, that elephant got chat acting real rowdy. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the progress we did for Shantae this month. Next, we have another game we finished. That would be the Dawn of War 2 expansion, Dawn of War 2 Retribution. Though I've gotta say, I'm kinda disappointed with this one compared to the original game. Now it might just be the faction we took, which was the orcs, or the difficulty, which was normal. But the game never really felt like the orcs were part of the story. They just show up, talk about pillaging, smash everything in sight, and boy did we crush everyone with no challenge at all. In the end, we fight a chaos demon, which the orcs had no reason or a real flimsy reason to fight them, and the game just ends. But hey, at least we got a new hat. Then we have Snatcher. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this because it's more or less a visual novel with a bit of gameplay sprinkled in, and honestly, I think you guys would probably appreciate it more just by watching the whole thing. But regardless, our main character is Gillian Seed, and this is his first day as a junker, a type of police detective tasked with stopping snatchers, which are killer robots that try to infiltrate society by disguising themselves as their victims. Kind of like doppelgangers from other adventure games. Anyhow, on his first day, Gillian receives his own weapon, and also he gets a robot companion, Metal Gear Mark II. However, disaster strikes and he gets sent out on an emergency to an abandoned factory to back up another junker agent. Unfortunately, he doesn't make it in time, and not only is the agent killed, but he could not stop the perpetrators. After finding a bunch of clues at the scene and from his ex-partner, Gillian tracks down the killers, who were actually Snatchers in disguise, and stops them with the help of a mysterious bounty hunter. After finding more clues there, he heads off to find a hospital that's helping out Snatchers. And that's where our story ended for this month. But like I said earlier, we've glossed over a lot of important stuff. This is really condensed, and you guys would probably appreciate it more by watching the full playthrough. Baldur's Gate 3 is the next game we'll recap. After fumbling around in the Underdark with no purpose at all, we decide to go topside and explore the areas we missed out on. We encounter Karlach, who's having trouble with some fake paladins, so we offer to help her out by dealing with them. But, regrettably, they actually dealt with us on our first try. But on the second try, we were ready for them. As a reward for taking out the paladins, Karlach offers to join us. And for some reason, we just can't refuse, so we decide to fix that our own way. We also fight a bunch of gnolls and pick up a mysterious bottle with the note not to open it. We save a lady from a burning building, we fight a bunch of Zentarum because they were mad about the bottle we found earlier, and finally, we go back to the Underdark to help out a bunch of sentient mushrooms, because why not? Coming up, we have Phantasy Star 2, yet another playthrough we finished this month. Last time we left our party, we met up with Lutz, one of the heroes from the first game, and he sends out our party out to find the legendary Nay equipment scattered in 4 different dungeons. It takes a while, but once they're all acquired, Lutz gives the Nay sword to the main hero for our efforts, and then sends them off to fight the main antagonist, Mother Brain, who's located on the spaceship Noah. The spaceship is pretty huge, and the enemies here are no joke, but the party powers through. Eventually, they find a chest in the middle of a hallway. They open it, and it turns out it was actually Pandora's box, and it released all the evil in the world, also known as the Dark Force. It was also the final boss in the first game, by the way. So we fight off the evil, but it wasn't easy. It was a very annoying boss fight. The Dark Force kept corrupting our party members, and it seemed like it was pure RNG if the Nay sword would purify our party or not. Anyhow, after defeating Dark Force, the team pushes through to finally meet with Mother Brain, and it turns out she was actively sabotaging the world on purpose. So we defeat her and save the day, right? Well, it so happens that Mother Brain was not the only one left on the ship, and it was actually filled with humans from Earth. And they're the ones who made Mother Brain and wanted to take over the planet Algo for themselves. So the story ends with the party fighting for their lives against the last bastions of humanity. And so we'll switch over to our next game, Might and Magic 6. We start our session of Might Magic 6 by restoring the Oracle to its proper form by reinstalling its memory modules. It then tells us that it can only open the way to the ancient weapons if we have a control cube, and the only one that's available is in Dragon Sand. So we should head there, but we decide to do a little side quest to the Temple of the Moon so we can get the Druid promotion quest done and make our Druid much better than before. It's one of the smaller dungeons in the game, unfortunately, but like every other area in the game, it's packed with enemies, so once we're done clearing it out, we touch the altar at midnight, and the promotion quest is done. Now that the quest is done, we go back to our main mission, which was finding the control cube in Dragon Sand. We head into a giant pyramid, and we start searching for it. The place is massive. I think it might be the biggest dungeon in the game, and obviously there's a billion genies inside and a bunch of Anubis-type enemies. After running through the pyramid for what seemed like ages, we figure out the passcode to the control cube, which was a reference to Star Trek, obviously, just like every other 90s RPG. With the cube in hand, we head back to the Oracle so he can open the way to the ancient weapons. And that's where our session ends for Might and Magic 6. Following up Might and Magic 6, we have Arcana with the Seal of Rimsala patch. Supposedly this patch rebalances the game and adds a bunch of quality of life features. Anyhow, Arcana is a first-person dungeon crawler. You play as Rooks, the card master, and we're tasked with sealing an altar in Baldur Temple that's been summoning evil spirits. Tifa, Alan's subordinate, joins us on our quest as we head off to the dungeon to seal the altar. We fight off a bunch of goblins, wolves, and lizardmen along the way, and finally we reach the top of the temple to fight the guardians, but something seems off. After defeating them, it turns out there was no altar, only a sealed sword. Alan shows up and reveals that the weapon is used to control Rimsala, an ancient evil, and he's going to use it to stop all wars. Also, Tifa was working with him all along, and she poisoned us prior to the fight, so we're helpless as the duo slowly takes us out. We get saved at the last minute and end up in a new town where we meet Axe and one of the two lost princesses, Sarah. We get a bit of story exposition from Axe and get a new goal to find the sage Raynal. Sarah also joins us, and we head out towards the Lost Woods where the sage is located. We slap a few enemies around and we find a man named Darwin fighting some monsters, so we help him out. Eventually he joins us, and that's where our session ends for Arcana. Next up we have Dungeon Munchies, where you play as a zombie who got resurrected by a ghost who does magical cooking, and once we eat that food we grow stronger and gain more powers. The game is pretty wacky at first. The writing is all over the place, and all that we're fighting so far are a bunch of talking fruit and plants. But as we progress through the city and defeat the Lord of the Forest, the story starts unfolding. And that's where we learn that the sun has left the earth and humans are relocated into a giant underground city. Also, magic is a thing. And there's also a giant apocalyptic flesh blob monster corrupting and consuming everything. So our goal here is to find a portal to get out of here with our ghost friends. We reach the top of the city only to find that the portal has been sabotaged and the only one left is all the way to the bottom. And that's pretty much the gist of it. Also, talking about the run, we've been using a tanky build with shields and high defense, and it's been working so far. Hopefully it'll be able to carry us all the way to the end. After Dungeon Munchies, we have Rule of Rose, a horror game based in Britain. How horrifying. You play as Jennifer and you are led into the Red Rose Orphanage. And it seems like the orphanage has a special meaning to Jennifer, but we don't know why yet. What we do know is that the orphanage is ruled by the Aristocrats Club, and they're all children. Awful, bullying children. And basically this game is one episode after another. Each episode has a story, and we need to fulfill the condition to carry on. Our first episode involves finding a butterfly for the club, or we die. Also, the orphanage changed into an airship for some reason. Anyways, we run through the airship, we find a dog named Brown, and he's gonna help us out from now on. Also, this is our second horror game with a dog companion this year. Eventually, with the help of Brown, we find the butterfly and we bring it back to the club, and as a reward, well, we'll find out next time. Now it's time for Yakuza 5. Since we did all the sub-stories for our chapter in the last session, we can finally focus on the story missions. So first off, we need to find an old pervert. After finding him, we learned that one of the players acted real strangely on the day that our main character, Shantae, got arrested. So our hero confronts him, and we find out that the team was fixing matches under the orders of a mysterious Yakuza group. Shocked, our protagonist sets off to find the hidden Nogaya family. But before long, Shantae gets ambushed, and it turns out that the townsfolk and the store owners of the town were actually the Nagoya family. We get saved at the last minute by Takasuji, and we try to escape. Barring their way is the chef they met up with earlier, and after a few knuckle sandwiches, we get the best of him. As a reward for beating him, he calls up his boss and passes the phone to Shantae, who finds out that the one pulling the strings for the family was his old baseball coach. We also find out that the head of the Tojo clan was also involved in Shantae's baseball career and offers to fix the problem. So obviously we fight him because it's a Yakuza game. and then we join him to Tokyo. Except, at the last minute, Shantae changes his mind and decides to go to the baseball stadium where he meets up with his old baseball rival Sawada, who seems to be involved in this too. Sawada pulls a gun on Shantae, they talk a bit, the Yakuza show up again, and then they fight together against them. And so ends the session of Yakuza 5. If you're confused about the story at all, I'm sure the plot will all resolve itself in the end. Next up, we have Wario Land 3. Now, this will be a short one. We made a bit of progress, but boy, this game loves wasting your time. I don't think I can count the number of times where I had to redo a section after getting hit by something at the end of it, only to get sent back to the start. Anyhow, first off, we find the book and the trident, which opens up the way to a new area. In that area, we gain a new throwing ability, which allows us to break the special blocks we've seen all over the levels. Eventually, we reach the sea turtle rocks, and I have no idea what we have to do there, but hopefully we figure it out by the next session. After Wario Land 3, we skip over to Super Paper Mario. In this one, we take a few dozen minutes to figure out where the heck to go, but once we find it, we set off to locate the 4th pure heart in this pixel world. Second, we enter the chapter. Our pixel companion TP gets captured by the nerdiest of nerds, Francis, and we have to save her. Along the way, we encounter Bowser, who joins the party. Bowser's pretty useful with his fire breath, especially against the blooper boss that we're going to fight. We also find a new pixel who's all into girth for some reason, which made the chat go crazy about girth for the next hour. Eventually, we make it to Francis's castle, answer a bunch of embarrassing questions, and finally manage to defeat Francis. With that, we retrieve TP and get another pure heart. And finally, our last game, we have the Ace Attorney Trilogy. We'll be playing the first game of that series, Ace Attorney. And a bit like what I said earlier about Snatcher, the game is better appreciated when you experience the whole thing, since it's pretty much a visual novel. Anyhow, we play as Phoenix Wright, and we're an up-and-coming lawyer, and our first case is saving our best friend Larry Butts, getting accused for murder. After a bit of cross-examination, we figure out that our friend was innocent and the real culprit was the door-to-door salesman. On our second case, well, it hits a bit closer to home as it is our boss, Mia Fey, who gets taken out. Her sister Maya is the prime suspect, and we have to defend her. After some more cross-examination, we press a witness who seems to be more involved in the crime than she lets on. But that's where our session ended for Ace Attorney. And that's it. That's all the long plays we've played throughout November. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can check out the October recap video as well if you missed out. And yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.